over so soon. We've had the MG ZS EV in our CarAdvice garage for 6 months now, but it's time to hand the keys back. So what did we learn about Australia's most affordable electric vehicle? Well, perhaps the switch to electric isn't as tricky and eventful as we may have thought. In this, you'll hear what we liked, what we didn't like so much, and you'll hear from our team too. So let's get cracking.
Let's recap the basics. The ZS EV is priced from $43,990 drive away and comes in a single specification where the only option is one of 5 colours. Not to mention, it boasts a 5-star ANCAP safety rating. Standard features include 17-inch alloy wheels, an electric park brake, panoramic sunroof, 8-inch colour touchscreen, 6-speaker audio, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, smartphone integration, and satellite navigation. It's powered by a single electric motor and a 44.5 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery pack. Output is rated at 105 kilowatts and 353 newton meters, and MG claim a WLTP range of 263 kilometres.
And well, that's exactly what it does. We regularly found that it would have over 250 kilometres of range from a single charge, and the team would just plug it in at the office overnight and wake up to it being at 100%. Just like we've done here, we've become very familiar with the local spots charging stations, and we've just had a bite to eat, plugged it in, come back to the car, it's at 100%, so an indicated range of 262 kilometres. So we'll just pop this back in the charger and be on our way.
The MG ZS EV has a charging claim of 80% capacity in 45 minutes on a 50 kilowatt fast charger, or up to full in 7 hours using a 7 kilowatt home setup. So all good in the way of does what it says on the box, as well as being practical and easy to use. While the range does limit the amount of cross-country touring you'll be able to do in your MG, it is definitely enough for urban living. In a family situation, it perhaps works best as the second car, great for those everyday short trips and errands where you won't need longer range or enhanced dynamics.
I personally really like the styling of the MG ZS EV. In particular, the 17-inch alloy wheels that it rides on, these rims are unique to the ZS EV. I think it's well proportioned, modern and sleek. Particularly love the mesh grille at the front. And also this Clipper blue gets a tick from me. I really love this colour on the SUV. At the very beginning of our loan, we did question how this charging port was going to stand the test of time. As you can see, it is quite thin and flimsy, however, didn't cause any issues at all. And as you can see, blends in really nicely with this grille. So after spending quite some time with the MG ZS EV, what is the interior like? Well, it's not too different to its petrol counterpart, but one big difference is right here. So you've got your rotary gear selector here, and then right here, these buttons in the center console are very different in the electric vehicle in that you can change your drive mode, your regenerative braking, and you can check your battery life as well. So you can change your regenerative braking. There's light, moderate, and heavy. So you can change how aggressive you want your regenerative braking to be, which is really handy if it's your first time driving an electric vehicle. I chose to go with light. And then your battery mode is also very nifty if you want to just click the button and see exactly what percentage you're on and how your range is going. Now, in terms of the look and feel of the cabin, I actually feel like it looks quite premium. Even though, yes, there are some hard plastics, there are also some real soft materials around, and they wore quite well. I mean, this is fake leather, but looks quite nice with the white stitching, and over time, it has worn really well. There's no scratches or anything on these blacks here, and as I said, just the look and the feel inside the cabin, I think for this price range, looks quite nice. Also, it's comfortable, and overall the visibility has been great to drive with. Storage is pretty generous for an SUV of this size up front. You've got an extra compartment underneath your center console here, which has your 12-volt and your 2 USB ports. You've got an extra spot here for your phone. I know it looks like a wireless charger, it's not, but you can pop your phone there. Center console is a pretty good size. And the door bins are generous, plenty of room for you to pop your bottles in. Overall, the cabin, I think, is really well assembled and well presented, but it's not all good news. Firstly, we found that the infotainment system at times was a little bit sketchy, especially when we were trying to connect the satellite navigation. It actually took quite a while to calibrate at times. It's worth mentioning the cup holders. Maybe don't buy a passenger a coffee because it was really awkward actually trying to fit into. This is only a small coffee, and while they've made them deep enough, they actually haven't made them wide enough. So that was quite unfortunate. Something that's really disappointing about the MG ZS EV, you can go up and down with your steering wheel, but unfortunately it doesn't have reach adjustment. The air conditioning is a little bit old school in that it's not dual zoned and you cannot actually see the temperature pop up on the touchscreen, which is a little bit of a shame. Other than that, everything that I've mentioned you wouldn't really expect from an SUV in this price range. So really not too bad. Let's jump in the back. I've spent a bit of time as a passenger in the MG ZS EV, and what I can tell you is that it's quite a treat sitting back here. You get plenty of light from that sunroof, and on longer trips, yes, you will notice that the seats are a little bit firmer and you don't get the extra cushioning in the under thigh, but other than that, it is quite comfortable in that you do get plenty of leg room, toe room, and decent headroom. I'm 173 centimeters and I think that that is plenty of headroom that you can see. So you've got pockets behind the seats here, you've got decent sized door bins as well. A USB to be shared. You do miss out on air vents, but it does look after families in that there are 2 ISO fixed points.
The boot was plenty with 359 litres of cargo space with the rear seats in use and 1,187 litres with the rear seats folded. However, they don't fold completely flat, but we never found this a hassle. However, we did have trouble with a malfunctioning clip on the parcel shelf.
As always with our long-termers, we'll let you know if there have been any tricky situations, and there was one occasion where it had to be taken back to MG with some charging errors that appeared and it needed a software update to rectify the situation. There were also times where there were some user errors where the team thought that they were charging but they weren't really charging.
This happened with our wall charger at the office as well as at some public chargers. And it really is just one hurdle you may encounter when living with an electric vehicle. Worth noting too that while servicing seems well priced initially, every 4th visit to the dealer is a hefty $800 plus. Over time it's still cheaper than a petrol ZS, but that just feels a little bit expensive to us. While we had the ZS EV, it was used by many members of the CarAdvice Drive team, so we could see how the MG performed various tasks in their everyday lives.
In terms of being Australia's most affordable electric vehicle, the MG ZS EV does exactly what it says on the box. So it is the most affordable and it feels like good value for money. It hasn't been all roses for us though. We've had a few minor issues. So the infotainment system has glitched in and out a few times. We needed to have that reflashed, and that has now sorted itself out, or I should say MG has sorted that out. It was some connection issues with various phones. Could have been the cables. We have that with a lot of brands, so it's hard to say that it is this specifically, but we definitely did have that issue. The other area that I think MG can really improve this offering is the ride. The suspension, especially at the rear on bad road surfaces around town, is quite harsh, it's quite firm, and I think if they worked on the damping and the bump absorption specifically, I think it'd be a lot better to drive. Especially on uneven road surfaces. It's fine when it's on a nice smooth road, but on uneven road surfaces I think it would be a markedly better thing to drive if MG could work on that suspension tune. I guess the other question that you need to answer the longer you drive this car is whether the range works for you. Now we've focused on the ZS EV as primarily a compact city vehicle, and it's fair to say that a range sort of in the mid 200s does make sense for a city vehicle because you're stopping and starting at shorter distances. You're not going to drive this car from Sydney to Melbourne necessarily. So I think that is something to take into account as well. But it has to be said, regardless of the way that you approach the assessment of the ZS EV, the fact that MG has aggressively put this on sale in Australia as the most affordable electric vehicle on the market, it makes a statement. And what it does in a way is it democratises electric vehicle ownership probably better than any other electric vehicle has, because it is now more accessible to more people. Is it perfect? No. Is it the best electric vehicle on the market? No. And there are areas, as I mentioned there, things like infotainment and the ride, that they could work on to make it a little better. But does it feel like good value for money? Yes. Does it do what you expect it to do? Yes. And does it make sense if you're buying an electric vehicle on a budget? Absolutely.
So I've spent a little bit of time in this MG. I took it home, did the grocery run, picked up the kids from daycare, that sort of thing. I did spend a lot of time on the highway in this car because my commute, I live way out west of town. It's around about 75 kilometres and it's all high-speed highway. And in that 75 kilometres, I used about 100 kilometres of the range in this MG. It used almost half of the tank or half of the battery, I suppose. So it's not the most efficient car in terms of highway driving. Like most other electric vehicles, this is much better around town using things like regenerative braking, waiting at traffic lights, that sort of thing. That's where you get the best benefit of this electric drivetrain. But when you are driving around town, it's got decent urgency. There's enough straight line performance there. And while the ride isn't as good as other cars, it's probably not as polished as something like a Hyundai or a Kia electric vehicle, I think it's good enough for the application. I think this MG really makes a case for itself as a second car. The range probably isn't enough for most people to use as their primary vehicle. If you do have to do a long highway run or something like that, you might get caught short from time to time, especially considering there aren't many chargers around in Australia at the moment. However, if you know that you've got, let's say, a 30-kilometre commute, you're driving through town most of the time, whatever it might be, you can charge this thing from home or even at work or something like that. This MG does make sense. It's just not as expensive as other electric vehicles, and that's a huge benefit.
I've been quite surprised by this MG ZS EV. The biggest factor with it for me personally is the fact it offers electric motoring for give or take $40,000. You don't really get that at the moment, and I hope more car brands follow suit. One other thing with owning an electric car, however, is charging. If you want to own one of these cars, you have to have a place to put it and reliable electricity to power it. I personally wouldn't rely on charging infrastructure, so storage is one thing that concerns the ownership of such a car. Another thing too is the ride. It's a little bit busy at low speeds, it gets worse at high speeds, but to be honest, it's fair and good enough for the course, which will be generally buzzing around town. There's a lot to like about this car. It's very regular to use, easy to get to know, and most importantly, feels like a normal car. So if you're looking to move into EV ownership, this is a great stepping stone and a good entry point to do so.
So there you have it, the MG ZS EV. As we mentioned earlier, it certainly can work for families, but probably best as a second car option. Otherwise, this is such a well-equipped car, it looks great, and let's not forget it is the most affordable electric vehicle available right now in Australia. Thanks for watching, make sure you like, it does help, subscribe, and of course hit the bell icon so that you get notified when more videos like this one go live.